Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another video in my mega product design course for beginners. In today's video, we're going to talk about color styles, but we're going to learn how to create color styles using the human interface guidelines. What do the human interface guidelines talk about when it comes to creating colors, naming convention, and all of those things? Now, there are many ways to set up color styles. There's no right or wrong answer. It depends on what works for you and your team. But we're going to understand if you can adopt the human interface guidelines methodology of creating color styles so that you can design your interfaces correctly. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, here I am in the human interface guidelines in the colors section. Now there's a lot of information here and I'm going to show you just what is relevant and whatever is needed, right? So there are a lot of best practices. There's dark mode and light mode and all of those things, right? I'm not going to get into all of that, right? But I'm going to come down here to the section over here where we have platform considerations, right? Now, this guidelines is for every platform, right? This is for iOS, iPadOS, macOS, watchOS, and tvOS, right? Now, we're going to focus only on iOS because the same methodology and practice works well across all other interfaces and OSs, so it doesn't really matter, right? The only difference is that the color codes might be a little different for each of the other platforms. I think macOS has its own set of colors, iOS and iPadOS have its own set of colors, but apart from that, the naming convention, everything else stays the same. Now, when you look at colors, there are three things that we usually keep in mind, all right? So I'm going to come down over here first to the colors section itself, right? Now, these are the system colors that is given by iOS for us to use. Now, of course, it's up to us if we want to use these colors or not. If we don't want, we can use our own brand colors, our own shades and everything, and that should be fine. Now, what you can see over here is that they have 4 sets. So one is light mode, one is dark mode colors, you have your default regular colors, and then you also have colors for accessibility. Now, we're not going to focus on accessibility or any of that aspect, so I'm not going to get into that. We're just going to focus on the normal naming convention over here, and we're going to focus only on light mode for now. What they basically have is different tints, right? And what Apple calls these is tint. They don't call it color, they call it tints, right? So you have system red, system orange, and then you have these various colors. I think I've got around 3 plus 6 plus 9, 12. So you've got 12 colors, right? I think brown was a new addition that came out probably last year or, the year before that. Anyway, then you also have system grays, right? These are basically our neutral colors, right? And I have a video on how to create neutral colors if you're interested to learn more about that. Link will be down below in the description, right? So here we have system gray 2, gray 3, gray 4, gray 5, and gray 6. And then you also have the macOS colors. We're not going to get into that because we're just going to focus on iOS. So the 3 things to keep in mind. One is the hex code. All right, this is the hex code or basically the RGB value. Then you have the name, so which is gray, gray 2, gray 3, gray 4, gray 5, and gray 6. All right. And then what you also have is the token value. All right, if I come over here in the token section, what is the particular color being used for, right? What is its use case, right? So here, any color can be used as a label. It can be used as a secondary label, tertiary label, quaternary label, placeholder text, separator, opaque separator, and link, right? So these are the 8 things that you can use any color for, right? And here you can see that it says a text label that contains primary content, right? So it can be a blue color text, a red color text, or white, black color text. It can be any color text, right? But depending on the use case, right? If it's a secondary information, you use a secondary label, right? If you're using it as a tertiary information, use it as a tertiary label. Using it as a placeholder, use it as a placeholder text. Similar to separator, opaque separator, and a text link. Now, what about surfaces, right? So here, they've also mentioned that iOS defines 2 sets of dynamic colors, system and grouped colors. Now, I'm not going to explain this because it's going to be quite confusing, right? And typically this is needed only when, you're actually getting into the development phase and, it's probably more relevant to developers rather than designers. But basically you also have background colors. So here it says system grouped background, system grouped secondary system background, and then you have tertiary system background, right? So for example, if you have an app which has a plain white color as background, you probably will call it system grouped background. And if you have, a little bit of a surface like an elevation on top of that, you'll probably give this another value, right? Now, grouped is again a confusion between grouped and system. In the simplest terms, you can say system background, system secondary background, and then tertiary system background, right? So these are basically the token names or the use cases, as we would call it, including these as well. And then the other one is the actual name of the actual color style. And then all you see over here is the actual hex code, right? Or basically the RGB value. So these are the three main things that we need. Now, in one of my earlier tutorials, what we had done was we'd gone ahead and created all of these color styles, right? And we went ahead and generated all these shades, and then we gave it a hex code, right? And then we gave it a, the name of the color as well, right? Now, in essence, not all companies or all design teams will use all of these colors. You may use 5 or 6 or maybe sometimes even 2, 3. You don't really have to use all of this, right? So it's your choice to figure out, do you want more colors or you want less colors? Now, the more colors you have, the more complex it becomes for designers, because now they have to sit and decide which colors they have to use for what purpose, right? The documentation becomes too complex, right? And it becomes so overwhelming for any designer, right? Not just that. If I come down here to the design tokens video that I had made, right? Here what I had done is I had done the same thing. All the colors were available, right? And I'm just going to look at the grays for now. All those three things were available, right? So we have the name of the color style, the hex code, and then what is the use case, right? Now, in this case, this black color is being used as a surface for the primary CTA. And it's also being used as a primary text layer, right? Now, in reality, one color can have multiple use cases. But when you're creating color styles in Figma, how do you do it, right? So if you come over here and if I just look on the layer styles, what we have done is we have separated them into text. We have multiple colors. We have surfaces, multiple colors, and then we have dividers, multiple colors, right? So now when designers are actually picking colors, it becomes so complex over here, because now you have to go through a lot, look at a lot of things, and figure out, is this the right one or the wrong one, right? And a lot of times this might lead to a lot of inconsistency. And honestly, for engineers also, it becomes a pain. Now, if you're comfortable with a situation like this, and maybe you're the sole designer, or maybe there are 1 or 2 designers, and you have a simple app or a simple design system, you're fine. But as you become a more mature designer and work in a more mature company, things have to sort of change, right? And the human interface guidelines is one of the approaches that you can take in order to design a really good set of colors and color styles. So coming back to our example over here, here is Duolingo's new app called Duolingo Kids, or I think it's called Duolingo Math or whatever it is. This is the screen, and that has a bunch of colors over here, right? Now, if I were to apply the human interface guidelines, how would we go ahead and do it? Now, before I get into that, I want to quickly take a moment to talk about something else. Now, material design also has its own different strategy. And as you can see, it's a little bit more complex in material design. You've got, different states over here, and then you've got, on background, on surface variant, you've got on tertiary container, you've got a lot of weird things over here, right? Now, this also works. This is another way of adopting and creating a color style and a color system. And if you want to learn more about it, I highly recommend you check out Learnproduct.design. It's my guide where I teach you how to go ahead and become an industry standard product designer. I've got a bunch of chapters over here, around 30 plus chapters that you can access. Some of them are going to be coming out very soon. And if you purchase the guide, you can get a lifetime access to it. So there's no problem at all. And this is the module 3 where I go into more super details, and I have a lot of videos that I talk to you and give you examples and exercise files for you to sit down and actually practice. And if you're interested in understanding how material design does it as well, you can check that out in this guide. So if you haven't checked out Learnproduct.design, I highly recommend you check it out. Link will be down below in the description. All right, so now let's get back to the video. All right, so what I've actually done here is I've gone ahead and just picked all the colors that are there over here. Now, my assumption here is that these are the only colors that Duolingo is using. Now, there might be more shades, all right, of green and blue and yellow. Maybe it's not being used in this screen, but it's being used in some other screen. I don't know, right? But for now, let's just assume that these are the only colors, right? And how would we go ahead and create color styles? So here, it would be Duolingo Gray 1, Gray 2, Gray 3, and Gray 4. You obviously start off with the darkest version of the color, and then you come down, right? And these are the green colors, these are the blue colors, and then you've got the yellow colors here as well. Now, one of the colors that I've not considered is the white plain background color. Now that could come across as gray, Dio gray 5, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and create another one. I'm going to call this Dio white, and then I'm going to leave that as it is, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this is 000, 000, and then go ahead and give this a super white color, right? So this is pretty much what we have. I'm going to put this over to the end over here so it's neatly there. Now, we've covered two of these things, right? We've covered this, which is basically the name of the color. We've covered the hex code, right? But we haven't covered the use case of this. Now, before we get into the use case aspect of it, let's see how we would go ahead and create color styles in Figma so that when designers are designing, they can actually use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these 4 colors, and actually I'm going to go ahead and rename these because I'm going to use a plugin to show you something really cool. So I'm going to call this Dio Green 1, copy that, and then this is going to be Dio Green 2, this is going to be Dio Green 3, and then this is going to be Dio Green 4. All right, and then I'm going to select all of these 4 colors. I'm going to come down here to plugins. I'm going to search for something called as Chroma. And we should get something called Chroma Colors. I'm just going to click on Run, and that's going to go ahead and quickly create these color styles for me, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and add them into a folder. So I'm probably going to call this Dio Green again, all right? And then put that a slash, and then you're going to add in 2, 3, and 4, right? Now, if you see over here, I'm not really assigning use cases. Right, I'm not saying what Dio Green 1 is supposed to be used for, what is Dio Green 2 supposed to be used for, right? I'm just going ahead and entering these as I see over here. And I can quickly go ahead and do that for the grays as well, if we were to, sort of look at it. So I'm going to go ahead and say Dio Gray 1, this is going to be Dio Gray 2, this is going to be Dio Gray 3, this is going to be Dio Gray 4, this 3, 4, and then we have Dio Gray 5 as well, right? I'm going to go ahead and select all of these and then quickly go to Chroma, run Chroma Colors, and then we have this. I'm going to select this. I'm going to call this neutrals, okay? And we're going to put all the rest of it here as well. So just, whoops, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So we have our neutrals, and then we have a Dio Green, and pretty much the same is going to apply here for the blue and the yellow as well, right? So now if I go ahead and create a component, or basically any layer, and I come here, I basically have these. Now the thing is that these are just colors. I don't know which one to add over here. So let's say, for example, I was creating this button, right? And if I was creating this button, I have this shadow over here. Now, the thing is that if I were to just create a quick rectangle, all right, I don't know which of those I have to use. I'm not very sure, right? And now there might be even more colors over here. So what would I do then, right? And the idea is that you don't have to make the designer think, right? It should be super straightforward. Now, again, going by the human interface guidelines, the best way to handle this is to make sure that you have very good components created in your design system. Now, if you have already defined the ways the component should work in the design system and what color it should have, then you will never have to worry about designers trying to figure out what color to use. Now, what I've done here is I've just gone ahead and recreated this button that we have over here. And if you have to see the values, right, if I click on this, I've just added the neutral Dio Gray 5. Now, I think this is supposed to be Dio White, so I'm going to quickly go ahead and actually change that to be Dio White. All right, that's fine, cool, right? And then we also have this color over here, which is I've applied the Dio Green 2, all right? And then we also have a shadow. Now the shadow, I can't apply a color style, but I've basically selected the Dio Gray 1, which is basically this color. Now the thing is that if I go ahead and define this in the design system, my job as a designer is done, and anybody else designing screens can quickly design it without using any problem whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly make this into a component, right? So here it's a component, and let's go and see what are the other sort of buttons that we might need. So here I am in Mobbin, all right? So now let's see what other sort of buttons do we need, right? So here we also have a loading state. right? So that could be a different state. We also have a white color button over here. I'm going to go ahead and quickly copy this so that we can sort of recreate it. What else do we have? We've got a blue color button. We've got I think we've got a disabled state for a button, which is interesting. All right, and then obviously the white button, right? So we pretty much have just a couple of types. Here we have other types as well. Here we have sort of a selected state, right? Now all of these are still buttons, right? So if we go ahead and assign the colors, right, in the design system, then designers just have to use these components all the time and they don't really have to think, right? So here is a blue version of the button again. And I guess here is a different color version, right? So we have a lot of things, right? Here also we have another one. So if I probably come down here to Figma and then just bring this over here, let's go ahead and make a variant of this. So I'm going to call this, for now I'm just going to call this type. All right, and I'm going to call this primary green, and then I'm going to call this primary white. All right, or maybe I'm going to call this just secondary. I think secondary is better. All right, or maybe I'm going to call this primary itself. All right, and we'll come over here, and here we have white. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose the white color. All right, this is green, right? Now this green and this green is the same, right? And I'm going to select that one. So let me just scroll this up and bring this up. I'm going to go ahead and choose the DO2. All right, that is the same as this, right? Now, as you can see, the DO2 is being used as the surface color over here, and I'm going to use it as a text, but I'm not defining that anywhere for designers, right? It doesn't matter. And then here we also have the drop shadow. So I think for the drop shadow, we will probably have to pick this. I'm going to just pick the color over here directly. All right, and if I come here to the hex value, I think it is E5, which probably should be, DO grade 3. All right, I'm also going to make the color of this to be white so we can see things in detail. And there is also a stroke, which is also there. So I'm going to add this inner stroke. I don't know how many pixels that is. Maybe it's 2. And then we're going to pull the same color here as well. Maybe it's 2, 3. Maybe it looks like it's 3. So I'm going to go to that stroke again and then give it 3, right? So as you can see, I have not defined the use case or the token anywhere. And once I have this design system, the only thing designers have to do is just pick it, put it into the screen and then change it to the one they want. And they don't really have to think which color should I use. That's how powerful and strong your design system should be. Now, the important thing is that when you're handing off these components to be given to engineers to be built, that's where you might have to be a little bit more careful. Now, there are two things. You can either decide to let the engineers figure out what colors to have, or else you decide it for them. Now, ideally, you want to let the engineers figure out their style of coding and their style of working, so you don't really have to tell them what this is used for. But in case where you want to give naming conventions and tokens and, basically the use cases to the engineers, let's see how we would probably do this. So if I were to take this button and come back here to the human interface guidelines, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and make a copy of this. Basically take a screenshot so that we can see this better in Figma. And I'm going to just paste that over here. All right. And then let's go ahead and grab the surface colors as well. And then come over here, copy that, and then paste it over here as well, right? So basically when I'm handing off this, I would provide 2 sets of values. So I'm just going to take the first one over here. The text is basically going to, the background color is basically going to be a surface color, right? So here it says system background. Now this is basically the name of the class they're using, which they're going to use for coding. So we don't have to give it to them exactly like this, and we can come up with our own things, right? So we can call this green background. All right. I'm just using random names over here. Then we're going to have green shadow. All right. Or maybe you can say green primary background, green, primary shadow. All right. And here we're going to say white, primary text. All right. So or maybe we're just going to say primary text, right? I don't know. We need to look at all the screens and all the interfaces in order to figure out. Probably this is the primary text, right? This is not. So I'm going to say, probably going to say button text, right? We could do that. And for the other one, what we could do is we could say this is definitely going to be primary background, right? Because white is going to be our primary background, right? Then we also have a shadow and a stroke. So we're going to call this probably primary background, because anything that is neutral, let's call it primary. And then you also have the button text. And we're going to say probably button text, I don't know, something like, underscore green or whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter what the naming convention is. Now, in fact, you might not even have to give off all of this to the engineers. You let them figure out how they want to build it and code it, because they're going to go ahead and create, components, and they're going to give their own color styles to it, and they will just see what the color style is, right? So in their backend, they will also have all these color styles prepared, and they'll click on the component. Okay, they'll see, okay, fine, this is a Dio Green 2. So a button should have Dio Green 2 as the surface, button should have, Dio White as the text, and a button should have whatever this color is as the shadow color. And they're going to do that for every single thing. Now, if they have to do it right, that means that you need to have a very solid and a powerful design system, where the only thing designers have to do when designing things is just pick a component, all right? And then you can go ahead and change of it, and let there be no thinking whatsoever. So, right? So even each of this is going to be a component, right? So here we just made the button, but then this card also can be a component, right? And in the card, you define what this is already, and you in the design system, you already define what the stroke color should be for the card. So designers, when they're creating this, they don't really have to think. So what that means is, when you are going ahead and working on problem statements for your portfolios or case study or whatever it is, make sure that you go ahead and create these color styles. And if you want to follow the human interface guidelines, definitely do follow it and start creating design systems on your own, right? And as you can see over here, with just 4 colors, they've been able to achieve most of the interface. Of course, white is not, I'm not considering white as a color over here, but these look perfect and they look really nice. Right? So anytime you want to see a stroke or a button or a neutral button, you know what the color should be, right? And this is something that you as a designer should already decide and make sure that you don't go wrong when creating the design system. So if you follow this, you'll then be able to go ahead and understand how to use the human interface guidelines in order to create color styles. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment section down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. And I'll see you guys in my next video. So then, take care and bye-bye.